Welcome in to another episode of the Stat Line presented by Fanatic Sports Network. I'm your host, Jeff the Stat Guy. Tonight, we're going to dive in. Got a lot to talk about. The latest on the recruiting front. Obviously, Shula getting fired. Who's going to be calling plays? And then what's this future going to look like under Beamer? We're going to jump into all of that when we get back. But first, the stat of the week. Unfortunately, South Carolina is still the only team in the country to not have a game with 350 yards of total offense or more. We're going to talk about that too. All of that right after this. Spin it.
And he's not had a pass. Look at this. Fourth down. He's not had a snap. Here comes that pressure. Lofts it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
We'll start off. First, we're going to look back real quick at the Ole Miss game. Unfortunately, I felt the defense played good enough to give us a chance to win. The offense just couldn't do anything with it, as the game was a lot closer than the final score suggested. I mean, after a while, your defense is on the field that much against a Lane Kiffin offense, you're just going to give up points. But look, on to some good news this week. Some big news dropping out of Jackson, Alabama, as the number 8 quarterback in the class of 2026, Landon Duckworth, shuts down his recruitment, saying Columbia is my home, which was big news, even coming on the heels of the Mike Shula firing, that he decided to lock in the Gamecocks, shutting down his recruitment. Big situation for us. I mean, Shula was his lead recruiter, so to lose the coach that was recruiting him, and for him still to say, I'm done with visits, this is where I feel that my home is big. Potentially the quarterback of the future. I'm obviously very high on him. And we don't know what that quarterback room is going to look like moving forward, obviously with having to bring in a new OC at the end of the year. Right now, the expected quarterback room next year, potentially Air Nolan, Cutter Woods, who we've seen get the field a little bit this year, and then of course the incoming freshman Landon Duckworth. He is billed as a dual threat quarterback, big arm, a different kind of runner than Lenore's. He's definitely more of a shifty runner, looking to make people miss more than put his shoulder into somebody. So that was huge news this week coming out of that. Obviously, it came down to he was committed to us originally, then decommitted. It came back down to us and Auburn. He chose us. But then LSU had kind of gotten to the picture as the season got started, also taking trips to Alabama as well, the home state school. So to bring in somebody like this, he's definitely the prize of our class. To go ahead and have that commitment secured, obviously still about a month, maybe 5-6 weeks away from the early national signing day. Still a lot of time for some things to shake out differently, but him shutting down his recruitment looks to be a great sign that we're going to get that pen on paper when the early signing day comes. Coach I jumping in the comments. You think the coaching change that's at LSU and possibly Auburn? I do. I mean, I think Auburn, with having the 5-star last year, I think that may have deterred that, as well as picking up another quarterback in the 26 class. And then obviously I think the Brian Kelly firing, You look at both of those schools will now have new head coaches next year, which means new staffs entirely, most likely. I do think that kind of helps kind of cleared the way for us, even with the Shula firing. Beamer's still there. So obviously, if he's comfortable with him and has a good relationship with him, I do think some of the other pieces moving and shaking the way they did this year probably did help us land him. But just a big time get for Beamer. Like I said, I mean, it was the prize jewel of this class when he originally decommitted. After we brought in Aaron Nolan, you were wondering what this class could look like. It was a name that everybody still wanted to see in Columbia. So definitely a big time get for that. Now, rolling back the clock, we go back to Sunday afternoon. The news I'd been waiting for about a month now. They finally announced the firing of offensive coordinator Mike Shula. Now, you hate to see anybody get fired. I don't wish bad on anybody, but the Shula offense has been absolutely abysmal this year, and that's probably putting it nicely. You look, we're the only offense in the country not to have a game of 350 yards of total offense or more in a single game. Yards per game, we rank 126 out of 136 nationally. The red zone scoring, we're ranked 121 out of 136 nationally. And then, like, in all of these categories, the highest South Carolina ranks in any major offensive category is 16th in the SEC, which would put them bottom three. And then most of them, they're dead last. And the biggest thing outside of how bad the offense has been, I believe, is the changes that we've seen from Lenoris. He's a completely different quarterback than we saw a year ago. Case in point, in the Ole Miss game Saturday night, and this isn't the first time we've seen it, but he got a first down and then dipped out of bounds. And how many times last year did we see him get that first down, put his foot in the ground, and get back up inside of somebody and get uphill and go try to break another tackle? And so the aggression and fearlessness that we saw him play with last year is not there. And unfortunately, football is a contact sport. And when you play scared, or play timid, that's when you're most likely to get hurt because you're not doing what comes natural to your body. And so whether that was a Shula thing, whether that's Lenoris just thinking about NFL money, I'm not sure. I think Shula probably had a hand in trying to turn him into a pocket passer. And a pocket passer isn't what South Carolina needs right now with how bad our offensive line has been playing. Lenoris has been sacked almost 40 times this year, and he's probably broken another 10 or 15. And so just a horrible thing. Coach I getting back in. Heard rumors that Sellers may hit the portal. Guess that depends on the OC hire. I'm not buying that at all. Everything I've seen still shows him having a top 10 grade. He's obviously going to look great at the NFL Combine if he goes that route. I think if he does not go to the draft, he comes back to South Carolina. It wouldn't make sense for him to transfer. He's from West Florence High School. I mean, he's an in-state kid. He has a lot of NIL deals in Columbia, in the Florence area. South Carolina's paying him $3.9 this year. From a money perspective, unless he thinks, I could transfer somewhere and guarantee myself being the number one pick next year, that would be the only thing that I could think would be reason to transfer. And the type of school that he would need to transfer to do that, I don't believe those schools are going to be calling. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I'm not buying the transfer rumors. I just don't. Miami, but they are loaded at the wide receiver position. Obviously the ACC is a weaker school, but I'm not buying it. I could be wrong. But again, I'm also so over the top that he's not coming back to school anyway, that it's really hard for me to kind of dial in on that. I fully think that he's gone to the NFL. So Miami looking for the next Cam Ward? Maybe. But the the problem is he's, whether I like it or not, he's not a passer. Like he is a big running back at quarterback. Now, maybe in the NFL, he can hold a clipboard for 2 or 3 years. We could see Lenore's change of who he is as a quarterback. But I personally believe, and I've said it all year long, that Lenore's best days as a quarterback are ahead of him, and we will never see it at South Carolina or in college. That it'll be a couple years down the road once he gets in NFL system and holds a clipboard for a couple years. But that's just my 2 cents on it. So Shula's out, and we'll translate that in. Earlier this week, they announced wide receiver coach Mike Fury would be the interim OC and handle all the play calling duties for South Carolina moving forward to finish out the year. Mike Fury obviously started his playing career at Ohio State in the late 90s before transferring and finishing his career at Northern Iowa. Had a short stint in the NFL and Arena Football League as a wide receiver. He's been the head coach of Kentucky Christian, a small NIA school. He's also been a head coach at Limestone University with 2 different 2-year stints here at South Carolina before they shut down. And then we've also seen him as a wide receiver coach with the Chicago Bears in the NFL. So while he has some head coaching experience, he's had some NFL experience. The one thing he does not have is play calling experience. And so very interested to see what this looks like moving forward. Obviously, he has all these young wide receivers that he's been very high on. They're his guys. We've seen the ball really go to them. So I'm very interested to see if they try to turn this into even more of a passing attack than it is. If maybe they try to change up some of the run game. With Shula, it was a lot of just halfback dives, just a lot of straight downhill running. Do we see some options and stuff like that get mixed in? I'm very interested to see what the playbook under Fury looks like moving forward and how he handles calling plays. It'll be very interesting. Obviously, his first game will be against Texas A&M. My wish list for OC, I'll jump into that, Coach, but give me just a minute. But yeah, his first game against A&M, I'm very interested to see what he does the first time he's in like that third and long 4, 3rd and 5, kind of that in between territory. What kind of a play call are we going to see from him? And so that's what I'm interested to see. Obviously, going up against a really good A&M defense, it's going to be very, very intriguing. But to the question from the comments, my wish list for OC, I do have a name in mind that's kind of out there a little bit. I would not mind seeing Billy Napier come back to the state of South Carolina. Obviously, Billy Napier was an offensive coordinator for Clemson back in 2009 and 2010. He played his college football in the upstate of South Carolina at Furman University and led them to a national championship appearance. But the thing I like about Billy Napier is if he ever wants to coach Power 5 football again, I think he has to reprove himself as an OC since he was calling his own plays at Florida and the offense kind of struggled. And so you're looking at a guy that's coming in with a big chip on his shoulder. Beamer's obviously going to be on the hot seat next year. So what better to hitch your wagon to than another guy with a chip on his shoulder? Maybe y'all both look right. And if not, the whole coaching staff probably gone anyway. A&M defense is 12th scoring defense in the SEC. Okay, so A&M can get got. The problem is South Carolina's only averaging about 17 points a game. So even going up against a defense like that, we're scoring 17 points a game. And that's been part of the problem with that. If you look at the struggles of us offensively, is we have the 3 punt returns for a touchdown. We have a couple defensive touchdowns. And it's not just that. One thing I look at, even that first touchdown against Ole Miss, while that was an offensive touchdown, the muff punt recovery at the 7 is what set that up. And if you start a drive on the 7-yard line, in my mind, that's already a touchdown. Yeah, it'll count as an offensive touchdown, but don't really care. It just doesn't do anything for me. Another big thing to point out is, who would have thought that the preseason, somebody on the Heisman watch list, all across, a media darling, just all of that, 10 touchdowns through 9 games for Norris, and that's his passing and rushing touchdowns combined. Just been absolutely abysmal year. But yeah, so Billy Napier is probably the top of my list. What I don't want is I really hope that Beamer goes outside the program and hires somebody. I really hope that Mike Fury just isn't removed as intern and just named OC. But that's just me. And I'm also interested to see what happens in bringing in an offensive coordinator, if Beamer will let him bring in his guys. A lot of times you see that. So do we see some position coach changes as well with the potential of a new OC? But that's a big thing for me, is this will be Beamer's 4th offensive coordinator in 6 years at South Carolina when the season starts next year. And he's obviously going to be on the hot seat. This is a hire that he has to strike gold on, because firing the OC isn't going to cut it again next year. I believe Beamer will be coaching for his job, and everybody might end up going, but this OC is going to be the most important decision that Beamer's probably ever made in his head coaching career, when he makes that hire at the end of the season. Brandon Street is an analyst that nice. Maybe I don't hate it. Yeah, but we've seen him as an OC, and I think he's better served in that analyst type role. We in coaching basketball, I say all the time, KYP, know your personnel. Me as a coach, I was the analytics and the stat guy. I could tell you on the fly how many turnovers we had and how many points we'd given up off those turnovers. I could tell you from the other team who we should foul in a late game situation. I was never meant to be the head guy, and I'm totally fine with that. And I think that's what Beamer needs to find a guy that just knows offense and knows how to call plays. And that's going to be the big thing. Yeah, but he had no quarterback or wide receivers though. Right. But so we're not going to, we thought the offensive line was going to take a step forward this year. It did not. So that's going to be a hope and a prayer the O-line takes a step forward next year. And then you are looking, maybe you have Norris back. Maybe you're starting a redshirt freshman, potentially having a true freshman beat him out in the spring. And then as far as the wide receivers, we unfortunately have a bunch of the same guys. We have a bunch of guys that have good speed, but they can't create separation in their routes. You look at Nick Harbor. Nick Harbor fights the football trying to catch it. Obviously, I think he's probably also gone to the league at the end of this year. But for the other guys, the lack of separation in routes for being speed guys, it's really like the one thing they have is trying to go deep down the field, but you can't push the ball down the field because your O-line can't hold up for it. And so I really think that we need something similar to a Tennessee, similar to a North Texas. We need something where we're spreading everybody out. The ball gets out quick, and part of the passing game is almost just like part of the running game as well. Just getting the ball out quick to the flats, whether it be tunnel screens, bunch of slants, and you just get the ball out quick and kind of high tempo, go to work type thing. But definitely, while while the unknown is problematic and scary, I will say, from my personal opinion, I would much rather have the unknown of what next year looks like, who could potentially leave in the portal, versus the known of what Mike Shula was this year. Again, I've been calling for this firing for a couple weeks now. I just felt that he had already shown what it was, and what it was not successful. And so to keep beating your head against the same rock, hoping for a different result, is just absolutely painful week in and week out. I thought coming into this year that we had the pieces offensively to potentially average maybe like 34 to 35 points a game. And I feel like had we been able to put those numbers up with how our defense has played, even though they've struggled against the run, we would have a much better record than we have right now. Buster Faulkner, offensive court. See, that's a name that intrigues me. I would not hate that at all. But again, it's like, are you able to get a guy like that to leave? And if so, how much money is it costing you? Because South Carolina isn't one of these powerhouses that has unlimited resources. And if things go bad next year, you're looking at replacing your entire staff, which means Beamer's buyout, firing all your coordinators, position coaches, and then building a brand new staff. And that could get expensive quick, depending on some of the guys you bring in this offseason. So while that name intrigues me, that is kind of on the back of my mind. But to that point, Billy Napier isn't going to be cheap either. And like I said, he's on the top of my wish list. So I guess South Carolina's in between a rock and a hard place. They're going to have to spend money at that position this offseason and then just hope they don't get burned by it next year. Shula's making 1.1. Right. So the money's the same. I don't think the money to bring the guy in, I think we can handle that. I think we can handle a little bit more to bring in what it would probably take to get Billy Napier to come in as the OC. The problem is if things don't work out, what does that leave you resource-wise for building the new staff? And so, like I said, I think we have the money to hire whoever we need to hire, but can he go cheaper? Oh, for sure. He's making 1.1 now. We could probably get him at 1.3. I don't believe Napier is going to be anybody's OC for cheaper than $2 million a year, which is, just a brutal price tag for an OC who just got done struggling calling plays in the SEC. I guess I'm just banking on that chip on his shoulder to want to get back to the mountaintop of college football coaching, carrying him over the top. And maybe that's the wrong opinion for me to have. But moving forward, the future under Shane Beamer and what that looks like. Obviously, there is no doubt in my mind 2026 is going to start with Shane Beamer firmly on the hot seat. Now, how many wins does that mean we need for him to save his job? With a brutal schedule next year, on top of that, with the SEC going to 9 games. Obviously, you're still in the year with Clemson. So, in my mind, I think at minimum next year, Beamer has to go 7-5 minimum to save his job. And I'll be very interested to see if that's doable for him once the season actually starts. But you look, the recruiting class kind of came together towards the end of June, obviously with some big splashes in July. So the recruiting class isn't as bad as it was back in May. They really were able to pull that together. It's going to be big to see what you're able to keep with guys that might transfer. And I think a lot of that has to do with who you bring in as an OC. If he also wants to bring in his own guys, like if we lose a Mike Fury at wide receiver coach, do we lose how many of the 7 wide receivers that we brought in last year? then end up hitting the portal. Are we able to, do we keep the offensive line we currently have and hope they continue to progress, or do we hit the portal strong for the offensive line this offseason? Obviously, running back will be, you'll have Matthew Fuller back next year, who's shown some bright spots this year, but you need running backs around him. I know we got 1 4-star in the class, but obviously trusting a true freshman with your job on the line, never a good idea. So what could that look like? Boot for it. Man, I ain't gonna, you know my opinion on it. I'm not gonna dog it. He brought in some guys he's high on, but he's also done some questionable things that I don't like. But I'll keep that cup of tea to myself. But yeah, so I think that the baseline for Beamer next year is 7-5, or he's out of a job. And I think that we're going to have to be big hitters in the portal. And that really scares me because you're going to have to find kind of some hidden gems. You're going to have to find, like, you're not just going to be able to go and get the best name at every position and shore up your football team. You're going to have to find some Demetrius Knights of the world, who was an under-recruited linebacker out of the University of Charlotte and came in and was a stud for us last year. So he's going to have to find a couple of those, I believe, to kind of shore up this team. You'll be looking for another defensive end opposite of Dylan Stewart. If he stays, talking about somebody that might hit the portal, that is definitely one. There's going to be a lot of talent in the portal from LSU, Penn State, Florida. Yeah, I mean, all these schools that have hired head coaches are going to have guys leave for sure, on top of just the other guys that naturally leave every year. And I mean, South Carolina is a part of that. We're going to have some guys leave, maybe some guys you're not expecting that are going to hit the portal. And so with that, I'm very intrigued to see what we can do. Our linebacker room will all be back next year. That's a plus. You're losing a couple pieces in your secondary. And again, you're losing your big boys up front in the middle. And we saw how much that affected this team with losing the 3 guys to the NFL last year. And so that's a position that is probably, if I had to star position, like we got to get the guys from this position. Will be defensive tackle. We need probably 3 out of the portal, and we better hit on every single one of them, or we're going to be in trouble heading into next year with Beamer's job on the line. Do you think those coaches getting fired help Beamer keep his job? I mean, I think he had to. I think if Mike Shula was still the offensive coordinator after the Clemson game, I think Beamer would have had a lot of explaining to do. Because it's been long enough now, right? Like we went 9 games into the season. We are at this point just who we are. And sometimes you just got to take your licks. But to stand beside that all year long, I believe he would have had a lot of explaining to do. So, and then obviously with the offensive line issues, with how many penalties we had across the O-line that were pre-snap penalties, I believe that the 2 guys we have seen him fire in the past month, while they did help him keep his job, also, to me, it's the spotlight. These should have been some decisions that were made a couple weeks before they actually were made. Like you've seen how bad it is. Why are we sitting on this? You should just kind of just rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of it. And so while they did help him keep his job, I believe they are also part of the reason of why the seat is going to be so hot entering 2026, because of how long that he let them stay. And so I will say it's a weird spot to be in, because it's not like South Carolina is this perennial 8-9 win like South Carolina, you're hoping for a bowl game. Like, and we do want more as a fan base. We want more from our team. But you're hoping for a bowl game and you're happy at 6-6 most years. And so to say that you need to go 7-5 before the year starts, or you're losing your job, coming after a season where it looks like you're staring 4-8 down the shotgun barrel, maybe 5-7 if you can beat Clemson, like that's a pretty big turnaround. And so some of the things it feels like are fixable, but the gonna have to hit a home run on the play caller for the OC next year. Gonna have to get running backs out of the portal. Gonna have to get defensive tackles out of the portal, and those are three very important things that it's like they to think that we're gonna have home runs at all three is just unrealistic. And so I'm interested to see on the sliding scale where we actually fall in and what we actually land if it is a team that can go 7-5 or better. And you're also looking at probably doing that with a first-year starting quarterback, whether it be redshirt freshman Cutter Woods or true freshman Landon Duckworth. Now, one name y'all haven't heard me mention is Aaron Nolan, and that is because I do believe Aaron Nolan is hitting the portal again. And the only reason why I say that is because that's what the coaches have shown me this year. Lenoris obviously goes down in the Vanderbilt game, and we see Luke Doty for the rest of the game. Later in the year in a blowout, we then get Cutter Woods. And so we haven't seen Aaron Nolan. And the fact that we haven't seen Aaron Nolan shows me that at first whether Luke Doty was just at the time had the best understanding of the playbook, whatever, they went with Luke Doty during the Vandy game. And then obviously later in the year, you give Cutter some reps. Didn't look horrible, but obviously doesn't have the escapability that Lenoris brings still behind a bad offensive line. So you look at that, the quarterback room is going to be young next year unless maybe we get in on a quarterback. Now, with a quarterback comes a paycheck. And so is that something that Beamer says this offseason, hey, we need to spend money at this position or I'm probably losing my job? And he might feel that way. And we may see him pull the trigger on a QB1 and let Cutter and Duckworth sit for another year. So very, very interesting. Obviously, bye week this week. So sit back, put your feet up on the couch, and just enjoy some good football without having to worry about if the Gamecocks are going to win or lose or how they're going to play. And look, next week we'll be right back here on the stat line, 8 p.m. Eastern. And you already know Texas A&M week, got something lined up for y'all. And hey, let's go do something we've never done. Time to shock the world. Let's go and win our first game at A&M in school history. But remember, around here, it's all about the Gamecocks. Go Cocks! We out of here.